Okay, so welcome everybody. We know what is retrograde tonight. So if I get kicked out of my own Zoom meeting, I'll get back as soon as I can. I'm at my old property at the moment because Virgin, the supplier, decided to take 12 weeks to put the new phone and internet into the new property. So I'm having to be here tonight with the heating on, luckily. And so a big welcome to everybody. Hi, it's good to have you here. And it's great that you're joining me from all over the world. We have the moon in Virgo. I'm about to have my lunar return. My moon is at 2 Virgo. And interesting chart. I hope you can all see that. I hope that if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a note that says chat, and along there, it's either more or captions, depending on how big your screen is. And you can have the closed captions presented at the bottom of the screen. So feel welcome to click on that. So in case you prefer to read, or English is your second language, etc., anything we can do to make this useful for you. So we have 173 at the moment, 174 in the room, and that's great to have so many of you here. So it's going to be a bit of a monologue tonight. I'm going to look at the chat box rather than invite people to unmute and to chat and etc. Just easier to manage that way, particularly as I'm without a second screen as I normally have, without my mouse, without all of that. So what I want to do is to invite you to think of a planetary combination that you have in your chart. Okay? Think of something that you find challenging. It might be a Mars-Pluto. You might find Venus-Jupiter challenging, particularly if you live next door to a chocolate factory. That would be my dream, I guess. And so I'd like you to make a note in the chat box of an aspect in your chart. Just tell me the planetary combination for now. I can ask you more details later. Just give me the planetary combination, something that you find challenging. Because what I found over the years, and I've done this in different places that I visited, I did this in Turkey a few years ago, and it was a great revelation, because what people found difficult in their chart, other people were quite envious of, or they liked, or they felt was a great strength. And one of the things that we learn in astrology is there's no bad aspect. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. Oh, I could be shot for saying this, but the way you express it isn't solely or simply about where it is, or whether it's in pristine condition, or whether it might be retrograde, or all of those things that we tend to use as buffers. Yeah, it might be like, well, I've got a Mars trine Jupiter, but Mars is in Cancer. There's always a but, or there's always a challenge or a problem with that. And what I want to say to you really, and this is, I'm coming up to 50 in 3 months, almost 3 months now, and I've been studying astrology for almost 35 years, since I was 16. Yeah, I should have just said do the maths anyway. And thousands of charts I've looked at. And the great thing is you can go to astrodatabank.com, look at people's charts. You can look at my chart there now. Somebody put it up a while ago. And you can do some research, you look at loads of different charts, and you realize that you can say, oh, well, that person's a murderer because they've got this, this, and this, and this person hasn't, and that's why they didn't murder, or they didn't go into politics, or whatever. Ultimately, we have, when we understand our combination, whether it's a Sun Pluto, Mars Pluto, a Moon Uranus, whatever it may be, when we understand it well, when we're conscious of it, we have really a storehouse opens. An opportunity opens, a big door opens for us to experience and explore that combination in lots of different ways. Yeah. So the idea that you've got Mars in Cancer square Saturn, poor me, poor you, I don't buy that anymore. I used to think, oh, that was difficult. And then you look at people doing remarkable things with so-called difficult aspects. And they may not know astrology, but they know how to do something. They know how to work with an aspect of who they are. Yeah? So I don't buy into the idea of a difficult aspect. Yes, the chart has many challenges, and we know that challenges usually turn into strengths. Challenges usually give us the backbone to attempt things. You ask anybody who's successful, the key to their success, as astrologers, we'll see that in their squares and in their oppositions, and sometimes in their conjunctions. We'll see it in the most obvious so-called difficult aspects. And so when people are making great successes of their lives in whatever they do, whatever they want to do, in whatever area, whether it's simply family and loved ones and a real nest of a family, or whether it's out there in the world or in the community, whatever, they're using their chart, they're using their talents in a way without excuse, usually, without the idea that, oh, this is problematic. This is a handicap. There's nothing in the chart that's a handicap. The only handicap, as I often say now, the only handicap is your inability to see it as a challenge to overcome or to learn from, a challenge to take up, to develop a strength out of, etc. So that's my take on it. And it's not me being Pollyanna. It's not me feeling like, oh, everything's good in the long run and everything turns out for the best. No, I don't believe that for a moment. But I do know that anything in your chart can be worked in a number of ways. And it doesn't matter where it is, the description itself has a multitude of possibilities. And that's the idea of what I'm going to work on with you tonight. Okay. Apologies, those of you who don't like watching people drink out of bottles. I actually didn't bring a glass with me. Okay. All right. So welcome everybody else coming in, etc. There are now 230 of us in the room, so I imagine there are going to be quite a few combinations to look at today. Okay, so I'm zooming back to the beginning of my monologue. All right. Okay. Well, the first one that came up was Moon Saturn. Okay. And we've just had a Moon Saturn in the sky. You can see that here. About 16 hours ago, the moon was opposite Saturn. And it's one of those aspects that gets a really, really bad rap. And yet the moon and Saturn are both parental figures in the chart. They're both about protection. They're both about containers, moon and Saturn. Saturn might be a cold bowl, and the moon might be more like a warm chest to sleep on or to hold on to, or a blanket of some kind. They have different natures, but in many ways together they're about safety and protection. So what I'm going to do, and if you're interested in this file, I will add this file as well. I'm just going to share my screen. I did this recently, and I used this for a number of lectures. So I'm just going to zoom in on this combination of Moon Saturn. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's trine, sextile, opposite, etc. There we go. Let's just select that for a minute. Here are some ideas to bounce around, and hopefully you'll have some ideas too that you may want to share with me. Now, when you've got a Moon Saturn aspect in the chart, remember that the moon moves every 27.5 days. There's a lunation every 29 days. And of course, the Saturn return is between, well, starts to get felt at 27 years old and starts to develop around, fully develop, mature around the age of 29. So the moon and Saturn have a lot in common. They are the planets that rule the signs traditionally to do with mum and dad, Cancer and Capricorn, or the 4th and the 10th houses, in spite of which one you feel is more mother and which one is father. What we do know about Moon Saturn, one of their great strengths is an ability to shoulder responsibility, to take things and say, okay, all right, I'm not going to have this present for now. I'm going to work. The next 3 months are going to be about work, or I'm going to have to delay my gratification. You know? The moon wants hugs and cuddles, and Saturn says, not yet, not now. Hold on, hold off, wait. Yeah, not the time yet. Saturn is all about time. The moon, the consciousness of the moon being in the womb of the moon, that container, there's no time, in a sense, if you want to see it like that. For the child, there's a lot of time for the mother waiting, but maybe there's no, maybe we don't know, but maybe there's no conscious understanding of time in the womb. So again, different energies, but together we find someone with a lot of backbone. And what I want to say to Moon Saturn people always, and we always get them in class, and they've always read something negative about that combination, and they're always a bit worried about it. What I want to say to them is, arrange time to comfort yourself. Arrange time to treat yourself, pat yourself on the back, reward yourself for the emotional commitment and investment that you have given freely to other people. One of the things about Moon Saturn is that they often will say to you, well, everything that I got, I had to earn. Yeah. And what I want to say to them, that may well be true. That may not always be true. It may well be true. But the important thing to remember with that is to understand that you may have to be the one responsible for the pats on the back, for the to arrange your own surprise party, whatever it may be. The idea of I've had to wait for gratification or satisfaction, or no one's going to give it to me, or I have to earn everything. Well, remember that once you've earned it, treat yourself, allow yourself time off. And I always think with Moon Saturn, they're driven, almost feel helpful and useful, or I'm only around to really help other people, to be of service to other people. And I want to say, cut that bullshit. You know, that may well be part of all of our journey, is to be of service to people. And I'm talking as a moon in Virgo, you know, square Neptune, I understand that. But the idea that you have to suffer for it, or never get what you want, or it's always going to be somebody else's turn. This is super important for you to tear up that script and rewrite it and recognize that you've earned it. You've earned your experience, therefore you deserve that pay rise. You've earned your holiday, so you turn off your mobile and you're not agony aunt or agony uncle to people while you're on holiday. Yeah, somebody slips a disc and you need to delay your holiday. Yes, delay it if you must, or get somebody else in to take your place. That sort of thing. It's important. Otherwise, the Moon Saturn becomes this hamster, this gerbil on a wheel, never able to get off, never able to enjoy life. And what I want to say is that you owe a responsibility to yourself to care for yourself. And if you've not set it up where other people will naturally think of you and care for you, and that often happens with Moon Saturn, we're always the caretaker, and other people just run away when we ask for some help. If we set it up like that, then we need to prioritize our own care. Yeah, super, super important to do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see if that resonated with anybody. Please do feel welcome to add some information about. Rachel says it resonates. Thank you. How would you see that in a relationship? Moon square Saturn. Yes. In a relationship between two people, do you mean, Jesse? I think like your moon is square their Saturn, maybe. You know, it's about good boundaries. It's about being there and then having time off. Often we spend our lives wishing we were somewhere else. Like I've got this habit now of when I'm working, I think, okay, today is a client day. Today is a writing day. Today I've got to get this done. Tomorrow, I can reward myself, or this evening I can do something. We get into a habit of always wanting to be somewhere else. And you're on holiday, you're at work, you're dreaming of being on holiday. When you're on holiday, you're thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on at work. Crazy that we have this game that we play, that we almost want to sabotage our own self-nurturing, our own comfort as well. Okay. So we have to mother ourselves in a way, or teach other people how we need to be loved. And ideally, both of those things with Moon Saturn. That's my feeling about it. Okay. Okay, yes. So Emma says, what about if you've got Moon Saturn and Uranus is in the mix? Well, again, you're adding like a third personality, a third person into the relationship of in yourself. And Uranus demands that. So Uranus is very good at cutting off and saying, suit yourself, screw that, I'm not doing it. It can be very good at doing that. Moon Uranus, or having experienced that, it may be afraid of that. If we look at Moon Uranus and go a little bit further down here, it can, I've seen Moon Uranus people stay with families when they've wanted to quit because they've been at the mercy of families that have broken up. So you never know how people are going to react to their lives, to their charts. That's always interesting. But with Uranus, there's an urgency. Uranus speeds things up. Usually it makes the emotional element of the moon less tolerant and more like, okay, I've done my bit. So the Moon Saturn may be very good at committing, helping, supporting, comforting, being there, being practical. And Moon Uranus says, all right, I've done my hours. See you later. So the Uranus demands that we get out of this cycle or this hamster wheel. Uranus is going to say, not for me. See you later. I'll go off and find my own family if you're going to behave like that. So it gives us something in our personality that can quit. And Moon Saturn doesn't like to quit. And Uranus will quit for survival, for freedom, for independence. That's my feeling about it. It's also super, super sensitive. One of the things I learned from the astrologer Liz Green was that Uranus is the planet of perfection, which sounds strange, doesn't it? Some of you obviously have heard me talk about that before. But perfection, the perfect idea, if this was like that, if only I was 5'11", with blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever, if only, or the perfect idea. The ideal is Neptunian. The idea, Uranus has a very funny kink in its nature. The humorous quote I often give about Uranus is there was a president elected many years ago in South America. And he said, from this day on, I open up the country to democracy. And anyone who is against this, I will jail, which I thought was hilarious. So there's something about Uranus that will speak up for freedom, but ban you or get banned for speaking up. It's that idea of saying freedom of speech, but I'm going to cancel you because I don't like what you've said. We're living in a very Uranian time at the moment with that very much. Okay. So with Uranus involved, it's more of a eject button on that Moon Saturn cycle of codependency, or Moon Saturn, it feels a bit like that Pisces, get off the cross, somebody needs the wood, that feeling of, well, that's how it is and that's just me. Moon Saturn people write scripts for themselves that they can't tear up. Uranus gives us an ability to just shred it. It's the shredder of the zodiac. Okay. All right. Now, a bit of an advert. Is it next month? I can't remember now. I haven't got it in front of me. On the website, you'll see there are 2 new courses of 3 Saturday afternoons called Astro Detective. And on one of them, I'll email you about this anyway, so don't worry. But one of them is about how to differentiate the different aspects, how to look at the square. So moon square Saturn as opposed to moon trine Saturn, and how it works in a slightly different dynamic. But my general advice is to just think of the two planets involved, think of what they got in common, think how they may differ, and start with that. The opposition comes out in relationship. The square comes in a very testing, ongoing test. The trine is more of a fluid connection that you have with those two planets. So there are different dialogues happening depending on the actual aspect. But most important is the fact that these two planets, or three planets, are speaking to each other as well. Okay. Becky says, I'm a recovering moon Saturn caregiver who found mindful self-compassion meditation a few years ago. How fabulous. Mindful self-compassion meditation. Okay, there had to be a phrase for it, didn't there? Daily practice now. Thank you, Becky. Well, thank you for that insight as well. That's wonderful. Okay, yes, Celestia says, I drew a boundary, handing back responsibility. A week later, they asked me to adult for them again. Yeah, people get used to it. Moon, Saturn, we always think about Neptune as the addiction. Drugs are Neptunian or Uranian, depending on the drug. Moon, Saturn has a codependency of, I'm needed, therefore I'm needed, therefore I am. Maybe that's the equation of Moon Saturn. And it doesn't have to be that way. So you have to be a little bit tough with yourself, tough love, and say, look, enough of that. Yeah. Moon Saturn, did she have Moon Saturn? Maybe not. Dolly Parton, somebody asked her once, are you overweight because you overeat? And she said, they asked her, are you overweight? As people, I'm sure people don't ask this question anymore. Are you overweight because you were abused as a child or something like that? And she said, she's a Capricorn, so she's talking a bit of Moon Saturn anyway. She said, I don't overeat because I was slapped when I was 5 years old. She said, I overeat because I'm a pig sometimes. Okay. All right. Moon Saturn, Duke says, always saying nothing will ever work out. Okay, rewrite that one, Duke. Definitely rewrite that. Nothing will work out. Well, there's always going to be some. Moon Saturn believes you always have to pay for it in the end. Well, I knew it was going to be. It was too good to be true. That's a Moon Saturn phase you'll hear. And again, tear that up. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those unless they're empowering. Okay. All right. Yes, Lynn says, my moon also squares Uranus, helped me want to break free. Yes, thank goodness for that. Yeah, Moon Saturn could get trapped in that sacrificial lamb situation as well. All right. So I quit for survival, says Trude. Okay, good, wonderful. Okay. Oh, thank you, Maria, for that. Okay, so somebody says, what about Moon Pluto? Duke says Moon Pluto. Let's look at Moon Pluto. Okay. Again, another one with a bad rap sometimes. But, I would want a Moon Pluto person with me. If I was a faithful person, I'm pretty faithful, I think. I would want a Moon Pluto person because they would see that, they would value that, and it would be important to them. Yeah, and I would want somebody who had a Moon Pluto who could see me through the storm. Yeah, that ability to survive the emotional roller coasters of life. Yeah, Moon Pluto people are very powerful, and you may have grown up being told that it wasn't good to be powerful. Maybe it was your gender that you're not supposed to be powerful, or just keep quiet, or stop showing off, or all the things that parents say when they shouldn't. Yeah. Moon Pluto person, you want Oh God, I'm turning this into a comedy lecture. I didn't mean this to be, but it reminds me of Mae West. And she said about bridge, if you're, bridge is like the card game, and bridge is a very Moon Pluto game. You keep your cards close to your chest. And Mae West said, bridge is like sex. If you don't have a good partner, you got to have a good hand. Okay, there we go. How many people do we have left in the room after that comment? All right. So Moon Pluto people really need, the moon is what you need, of course, what you're sensitive to. They need somebody that's going to go deep with them, that's not afraid of going deep, not afraid of exploring, not afraid of saying, I hate that person with huge passion. Yeah. Moon Pluto people, I think wherever we have our Pluto, we go through this journey of feeling powerless in some area of our lives, only to become powerful in that area that once felt so alien, that felt so powerless. We felt so impotent in that area. Wherever we have our Pluto, there's a great, typical Pluto word, transformation. There's a Pluto transformation from feeling at the mercy of somebody else or somebody else's drama to the point where you start owning it. Think about Pluto and ownership. The great people, the people who own the most in the world are the plutocrats. And the Moon Pluto people, the journey for them is to own their emotions, to own their past, to kill off their past if they need to, or at least to eliminate the idea that the past will always be what shapes them, and that the past always determines the future. We know to some extent who we are today is a result of everything that we've been through, of course. But what we don't want, particularly if we've got Moon Pluto, is to create a habit. The moon is a habit. To create the habit that life is without power, that we can never feel empowered. We can never have the attention or the acclaim or the creative input that we want, whatever it may be. Mothers always get the blame for pretty much everything. And I'm sure some of you here are mums who feel that way too. Mums do get the blame. And, psychologists will tell you as well that pretty much everything up to the age of 7 in our lives is linked to the mother, and it's the mother's fault. Well, Moon Pluto people will need to unravel the relationship with women, particularly the mother or mother figure in their lives, and understand what is theirs, what they own, and what other people own, or what the mother owned or wouldn't own. Yeah. A lot of my clients with Moon Pluto, they're exasperated. They get to the point of feeling, they're never going to change. I'm never going to get my mum to understand that. I'm never going to get her to understand or believe me or whatever it may be. And I think part of the cure, the kill or cure of Moon Pluto, is to realize that we don't have the power to get anybody else to understand anything. We can't do that. We really can't. All we can do is have a dialogue with them and let them do what they can in their own time. I think that's all we can do. And so that's a big issue for Moon Pluto, a big issue, a feeling, need to be in control because of the lack of control that accompanied the early years. That could be one way of looking at it. I've got here reclaiming power through self-examination. Now, you may not be somebody that believes in therapy. Well, you paint, dance, swear. My granddad, I think it was a Moon Pluto, and he never swore all his life. And he had a stroke. I think he had a stroke, and I never knew him. And he went to hospital, and I think he was in a coma for a number of weeks, and he swore the only thing he ever said in the coma were four-letter words. That was his therapy. So what I'm trying to say is, whatever is your therapy, do it. Be jealous of it, jealous of your time. Don't give it up. If you're a Moon Pluto person, maybe even a Sun Pluto, but Moon particularly for your need, your habit, jealously guard your time when it comes to your creative work, whatever proves therapy. Now, you might have it in Virgo, Moon Pluto in Virgo. It might be that you love to put things in order, maybe. I have a Moon Pluto friend who used to, every year, she used to look forward to the Eurovision Song Contest. And she'd have these highly intricate charts of which country got which point from which country. And you couldn't speak to her for a week around the Eurovision Song Contest. Her Moon, Pluto in Virgo, she was obsessed, and that was her therapy. She loved it. And I want to say to you, whatever it is you love to do, ideally without hurting anybody else, of course, do something with your Moon, Pluto daily. Or if it can't be daily, every other day, weekends, take a whole day out for it. 8 till 9 in the morning, whatever it is, grab it, hold on to it, because it'll give you power. It'll be about you and not about somebody else. It will be you controlling that time, that energy, that therapy, that creative work. Okay. So Moon Pluto people need a level of intensity. That's important. A lot of people walking around without much emotional intelligence. Luckily, the fact that we're all in an astrology talk right now means that we are interested in more than what we just read in the newspapers, literally with the astrology column, but generally looking at what we experience in the world. We want to go further. We want to go deeper. Already, the fact that we're here today, or have been interested in astrology for 6 years or 60 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever, means that we're using our Pluto in a way. We want to go deeper. We want to explore more about who we are, what we were born to do. And believe me, it's a luxury, because most people on the planet don't get an opportunity to sit around and saying, poor me with my Moon Pluto, or I've got nothing in the 10th house, or whatever it might be. Okay.